Number 1.
On the night of August 17, 2006, Brandy was scheduled to work at the fire station before heading to the Osceola courthouse the next day for Jeff's sentencing hearing. At 9:30 p.m. that night, she called the house and said prayers with her children before spending some time chatting with her husband on the phone. While at the fire station, she was doing inventory and told her co-workers of Jeff's court appearance, where she was to be a character witness, in the hopes of lightening his sentence. She had also enlisted the help of her former boss, Randall Richmond, and that of her current boss at the Millabur Fire Department. An hour after hanging up with Brandy, Jeff got a call, reminding him that his court appearance had been changed to 8 a.m. the next day. At 11 p.m., he left a message with his lawyer and then tried to contact Brandy to inform of her the change in time. However, she didn't answer her phone, and Jeff found her voicemail to be full when he tried to leave a message. On the morning of August 18, 2006, Jeff received a call from his lawyer, who told him not to worry about the change in time and to arrive at the courthouse around 10 a.m. He tried, yet again, to call Brandy, but was unable to get a hold of her, and when he called the fire station he was told she'd already left. Upon hearing this, Jeff assumed his wife was on her way home. Brandy didn't show up while Jeff got the kids ready for school. He dropped them off and began heading to the Osceola courthouse, all while trying to get in contact with her. When that failed, he got a hold of her co-worker, named TJ, who told him that Brandy had left the fire station around 10:30 p.m. the night before. This worried Jeff, as her shift had been scheduled to end at 7 a.m., but he was unable to search for his wife at that moment. When Jeff arrived at the courthouse, he inquired if any of the couple's friends and family had seen Brandy. When none had, he hoped she'd simply gotten cold feet, as she disliked going to the courthouse. During this time, he received a call from Randall Richmond, who told him he was unable to make it to the courthouse that day. When Jeff asked if he'd seen Brandy, he abruptly hung up. Overall, the sentencing hearing lasted approximately 30 minutes, with Jeff and Kirsch being sentenced to 18 months in jail and 3 years probation. As the sentence appeared to be harsher than ones given to those convicted of similar crimes, many felt the judge was trying to send a message, given the pair's former jobs as firefighters. As he was taken into custody, Jeff began to worry about searching for his missing wife. In support, his and Brandy's extended family picked up the couple's children from school and began their own search. Upon returning to the Hall house, it was determined no one had seen or heard from Brandy since she left the Millabur Fire Department the previous night. Debbie was particularly worried about this, as Jeff and her daughter hadn't been getting along as of late due to Jeff's drug charges. Unable to wait around, she spent the next few hours searching for Brandy, driving around Palm Bay and Millabur looking for her and her missing pickup truck. Just before dark, Brandy's truck was pulled out of a small retention pond located just off Treeland Boulevard near the Palm Bay campus of Brevard Community College. Earlier in the day, a fisherman had discovered a firefighter's bunker bag floating in the water, which contained boots, pants, a jacket and a helmet. Believing it to have been lost during a training exercise, he brought it to the local fire station, where it was determined to belong to Brandy. Concerned, firefighters converged on the scene, where they noticed broken tree branches, tire marks in the ground, and an oil slick in the water, which indicated a vehicle had entered the pond. Divers would later confirm this to be true. After hours of work, firefighters, who were joined by the local police, pulled out a green Chevrolet pickup truck from the pond. This was confirmed to belong to Brandy. Once it was out of the water, the doors were opened, but the missing woman was not in the vehicle. This led to a search that went into the night, with many of those looking for Brandy having worked with her in the past. As the truck was sent away for forensic examination, Jeff learned of its discovery while watching the 11 p.m. news through his cell. The fact the truck had been discovered underwater worried him, as Brandy had always thought of the vehicle as her pride and joy. The next morning, searchers returned to the area with cadaver dogs and volunteers. A drive team was used to search the pond for Brandy or any personal items, but found the task near impossible, given how murky the water was. Those on land conducted a thorough search of the woods and area surround the pond, with one of the dogs searching its west side, but nothing was found. Between August 20 and 23, 2006, the retention pond was drained in case the divers had missed anything of importance. However, while it was being emptied, investigators came to the conclusion that Brandy wasn't likely to be in the water, a belief that was later confirmed. For the first 30 hours, police refused to release any information about the disappearance, including Brandy's name or photo. Given the truck was found underwater, police looked into the possibility that Brandy had died by suicide. Over the past few months, she had been experiencing many financial pressures due to Jeff's charges and her losing her job at the Palm Bay fire station. The last time her friends had seen her, she'd appeared stressed about the number of bills the family had, and she had felt she wasn't getting ahead, despite how much she was working. Because of this, she'd spent the night before her disappearance looking through the phone book for places to work. Investigators spoke with Brandy's family in order to develop a timeline for the night she went missing. Jeff was the first to be approached and was asked if he'd harmed his wife. He said he hadn't and explained he'd last spoken to her around 9:30 p.m. on the night of August 17. He also explained that he'd been unable to reach her when he tried calling her cell phone later that night. Fellow firefighters were also spoken to, and they shared that Brandy's stomach had been upset that night, so she had decided to leave early and head home. Surveillance footage from both inside and outside the fire station confirmed that nothing suspicious occurred. It showed her relaxed and talking to her colleagues in the station's living room before leaving alone in her pickup truck at approximately 10:50 p.m. Hoping to uncover new leads, investigators subpoenaed Brandy's cell phone, bank and email records. By looking through her cell phone records, they were able to confirm her call to Jeff, as well as his attempt to call her at 11 p.m. They also noticed an 11-minute phone conversation Brandy had at around 11:05 p.m. that night. The call had been placed by Brandy to Randall Richmond. On August 2, 2006, Richmond was asked to come into the Palm Beach Police Department for questioning. He initially told investigators he hadn't spoken to or seen Brandy in a few weeks, a claim that was disputed by the previously reviewed cell phone records. When confronted with his, Richmond admitted to having spoken with Brandy, who told him she was planning on leaving the night she went missing. She had been waiting at a Sunco gas station for money to be delivered, but she hadn't told him who was delivering it to her. All she said was that he was not to contact her again. Brandy's family finds Richmond's story difficult to believe, as she wouldn't have left her children without notice. The police considered if the sinking of Brandy's truck could have been part of some elaborate plan for the missing woman to stage her own disappearance. While checking out the details, they found the story difficult to confirm. No one remembered seeing Brandy or her truck at the gas station, and there was no external video to obtain an image from. However, her cell phone did ping off a cell phone tower from a 3-mile radius that covered both the pond and the gas station. Eventually, the truck's forensic results were returned and showed Brandy's blood was present on the driver's side door, on one of the seats, and on the floorboard on the driver's side. Given the amount of water that had been in the vehicle, it was difficult to determine how much blood there really was, but it did lead investigators to question if foul play had been involved in Brandy's disappearance. It also helped to fuel public speculation that she had staged her own death in order to disappear. As she had been an EMT, she would have known how to take her own blood. As the investigation progressed, Brandy's family began to question why the police had yet to find her gun, which she always kept on her. According to them, she wouldn't have allowed a stranger to get near her, so if someone had harmed her, it would have had to have been someone she knew and trusted. Police worked to get the case featured on America's Most Wanted in order to gain it national attention. Jeff's arrest was looked at in relation to Brandy's disappearance, as investigators wondered if those Jeff had dealt with would want to silence his wife in order to keep her from talking. This put him under suspicion, something that was further fueled by him refusing to speak with authorities on the advice of his lawyer. As he was trying to appeal his sentence, he didn't want anything to affect it. To help encourage leads in the case, Brandy's family put up a reward for $1,000. In order to raise more money, her friends set up a garage sale. Eventually, the total was increased to $10,000. The longer Brandy was missing, the more investigators believed foul play was involved. After their initial searches, the case went cold, and her family and friends found it difficult to hold out hope she was still alive. On June 28, 2007, fishermen discovered her backpack floating in a canal near Vero Beach, located within Indian River County, Florida. It was 30 miles south of where her truck had been found and contained her day planner, her wallet and other personal items, as well as metal weights. Its location and the inserted weights puzzled investigators, as the canal and pond were not connected, and they were led to believe someone had purposely thrown it where it was found, in the hopes it would never be recovered. Upon the backpack being found, the theory that Brandy had disappeared willingly was ruled out. This was due to the fact that the amount of clothing found within was only enough to support a single change of clothes. This led to a search of the canal by Miami Search and Rescue. While nothing was initially found, 2 more items of interest were located on July 7, 2007. Brandy's family has pointed out that her medication was absent from the backpack. This is suspicious, as she took it daily to deal with headaches that were the result of her ATV accident. In July 2008, a yellow Osceola County Fire Department helmet was found washed ashore near Mathers Bridge in Indian Harbor Beach, Florida. It had been previously used by Brandy during her time with the Hullapaw Fire Department. While it's not believed to be related to the missing woman's disappearance, investigators haven't completely ruled it out. After 14 months of silence and a lost appeal, Jeff agreed to speak with police. He was visited numerous times and his whereabouts on the night in question were checked. When asked to take a lie detector test, he obliged and showed no signs of deception. He has since been forthcoming with information and is no longer classified as a suspect or person of interest, and it's been ruled out that Brandy's disappearance is related to his involvement in the drug trade. People have questioned if Brandy's disappearance would have received more coverage if Jeff hadn't been sentenced to jail time. It's a thought that weighs heavily on him. With Jeff's cooperation, the focus of the investigation moved again to Randall Richmond. During his discussions with police, Jeff shared that Richmond and Brandy had been having an affair, with one of Brandy's cell phones showing text messages that indicated something was happening between the 2 former co-workers. The affair was also confirmed by those closest to the missing woman. In December 2007, a search warrant was obtained and Richmond's truck was searched. It was learned that his vehicle had been seen in the area not far from where Brandy's truck had been located, and her friends shared that the pond had been a place where the pair would meet in secret to chat. While the truck was seized, no trace evidence was found. When Richmond was brought in for questioning, he told investigators that the pair's relationship was simply an emotional affair and that they hadn't crossed any boundaries. On the night in question, he claimed to have been asleep in his private room at the Palm Bay fire station and said those working with him would have noticed if he'd left at any point. However, as there is an exterior door in the room, he could have left without anyone noticing. It was also revealed that Brandy and Richmond's wife, Anne Marie, had had a verbal altercation several months before she went missing, which was witnessed by many. As well, several people, including Jeff, had seen threatening text messages sent by Anne Marie to Brandy. When questioned by police, she said she'd went straight home after completing her shift as a nurse, sometime around 11 p.m. Throughout the investigation, Richmond has continued to claim he doesn't know what happened to Brandy. Both he and his wife have since obtained lawyers and have stopped speaking with police. They have since divorced. In February 2009, a search and rescue group out of New England searched around the retention pond where the truck was found, this after several new areas of interest were named. The group saw this as an opportunity to train new members and search dogs in realistic conditions, and they used new equipment and search techniques, including an underwater infrared camera to scan several waterways. There had been concerns that Brandy's body could have been buried under dirt that was moved in order to help drain the pond, but the search dogs didn't hit on any scents. There has been no activity on Brandy's bank accounts since she went missing. In August 2011, the Palm Bay Police Department enlisted the help of FBI profilers, this during a time where they were giving the case a fresh look. At the time, they felt they needed just one good tip in order to solve the case. In February 2012, cadaver dogs were used to search for Brandy through palmettos and around the Malabar Fire Department, but didn't hit on anything. It was thought the dogs would be able to cover more territory during the wintertime. A search near Babcock Street and Osage Street in Palm Bay was conducted in December 2018 by detectives and Brandy's family. 3 years prior, a funded search of the area had alerted to things of interest, but weather had dampened search efforts. It included the search of a park, properties that had since been plowed over, wooded areas and swampy wetlands. In August 2019, 2 cadaver dogs with the Peace River K9 Search and Rescue indicated that something might be buried in the backyard of Brandy's old house, a finding that was later backed up through the use of ground-penetrating radar. The radar had indicated that disturbances were roughly 5 feet below the ground, so in October 2019 a new search was conducted with the help of the city's Public Works Department, an anthropologist and the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. However, nothing was found. Police feel Brandy was likely murdered on the night she went missing, and, as such, the case has been ruled a homicide. Numerous detectives have taken over the case throughout the years and all suspect foul play. They continue to develop new leads and say they have several persons of interest. To help further the case, psychics have been contacted, and a retired detective bought an ad in a local newspaper to remind the public that Brandy is still missing. In August 2015, Brandy's family petitioned the court to have her declared legally dead. She received a presumptive death certificate, which put her death on the same night she disappeared. Brandy's family feels someone out there knows more than they're saying. In order to help bring in new leads, they've gotten the help of private investigator Nicholas Sandberg, who is working on the case pro bono. 1. The first theory proposed in the case is that Brandy died by suicide. This is supported by the financial pressures she was facing at the time she went missing. However, given her body wasn't located in the pond where her vehicle was found, and no one has come across her body during the numerous search held over the years, this is seen as unlikely. 2. Some believe Jeff to have been involved in his wife's disappearance, given the amount of legal pressure he was under due to his drug charges. However, he has denied any involvement and passed a lie detector test that was administered in relation to the case. As such, investigators do not feel he was involved. 3. There's a theory that Jeff's arrest may have put Brandy's life in danger. It's possible that those Jeff dealt with got wind that she was going to testify at his sentencing hearing and thus could have been afraid she'd release names whilst on the stand. Could she have been killed in order to keep her silent? After speaking with Jeff, investigators have stated this theory is unlikely. 4. One of the more widely discussed theories in the case is that Brandy disappeared of her own accord, this supported by the story Randall Richmond shared upon speaking with investigators. The blood found in her truck has led some to believe she may have faked her own death in order to disappear, but police haven't been able to confirm how the blood got in the vehicle or whether Richmond's story has any credence. As well, the discovery of the backpack in the canal near Vero Beach also rules out this theory as being plausible. 5. The final and primary theory in the case is that Randall Richmond is somehow involved in Brandy's disappearance. As the two were having an affair, and he lied about being the last one to speak with her, some are of the belief that he had something to do with Brandy going missing. There's also the sightings of his truck near the retention pond and his strange behavior on the day of Jeff's court appearance, as well as the altercations between his wife and Brandy. As aforementioned, Richmond continues to claim he knows nothing of Brandy's disappearance. Investigators have stated they feel he knows more than he's shared. Jeff was paroled in October 2009 and reunited with his family upon his release. He has since relocated to Orlando, Florida, and shares that he and his children miss Brandy dearly. In 2016, Brandy's family held a memorial for her behind the Malabar Fire Department to mark the 10-year anniversary of her disappearance. Brandy Hall went missing from the Malabar Fire Department in Malabar, Brevard County, Florida on August 17, 2006. She was 32 years old and was last seen wearing an off-white long-sleeved shirt with the Malabar Fire Department logo over the left breast and the words Malabar Fire Department on the back, dark-colored work pants, and mid-calf work boots. At the time of her disappearance, she stood between 5'63" and 5'83" and weighed approximately 125 to 140 pounds. She has blonde hair and blue eyes. She has two noticeable scars, one of her right eyebrow and the other on her abdomen. She also has a tattoo of a fishing scene on her lower back and one of Tweety Bird with a fire hydrant on her ankle. Her navel and tongue are pierced. Currently, her case is classified as endangered missing and investigators are treating it as a homicide. If alive, she would be 46 years old. If you have any information regarding the case, you can contact the Palm Bay Police Department at 321-952-3456.
Number 2.
On May 5, 2017, Smith's sister called the RNC, concerned about his well-being. She informed the officer that she believed her brother was in his pickup truck near RCAF Road, close to the St. John's Airport. Using GPS to track Smith's cell phone, the officer arrived in the area and approached the truck, in which he saw a white male with short blonde hair and sunglasses. Smith drove away and was later found near a pond off Peacekeepers Way in Conception Bay South, where he later tried to harm himself. The officer placed him in handcuffs, and he was held in a healthcare facility for a total of 4 days. During this time, Cortney obtained a peace bond that prevented Smith from having any contact with her, this confirmed by friends who were aware of their relationship. When Smith appeared in front of a judge in order to change this restriction on May 8, 2017, he was denied. He was, however, granted permission to drive to work, a privilege that had been revoked prior to this court date. Despite the peace bond, Smith attempted to contact Cortney 33 times on June 5, 2017. He also drove to the family home in Mount Pearl. Cortney contacted the authorities about this, but Smith drove away before they could arrive. However, he was later stopped near the home and arrested. On June 7, 2017, Smith appeared in court on a number of offenses, to which he primarily pleaded guilty. He admitted to the assault on Cortney, for which he received a suspended sentence, and to knowingly publishing, distributing, transmitting, selling, or making available an intimate image, knowing that the person depicted did not give their consent, which resulted in another suspended sentence. As well as pleading guilty to a number of driving-related offenses, he was also convicted of breaching a recognizance that prohibited him from having contact with either Cortney or her mother in relation to the events of 2 days prior, and was sentenced to 2 days' time served. A number of charges were also withdrawn, with both the Crown and the defense agreeing he was currently in the middle of a crisis. Upon leaving the courthouse, Smith was given a probation order to stay away from Cortney and her mother. That same day, Cortney and Jason took Oliver to his weekly swimming lesson at the Muse Community Center in St. John's, after which Jason dropped Cortney off at her mother's house. After spending the afternoon with her family, she was later dropped off at her residence on Wellington Crescent, located in Mount Pearl. Cortney was last seen on June 7, 2017 in Mount Pearl, Newfoundland, 4 hours after Philip Smith left the courthouse. The Royal Newfoundland Constabulary headed up the investigation upon being notified of Cortney's disappearance. To kick off their search, they interviewed the missing woman's friends and family, including Jason, who allowed forensic investigators to search his vehicle. After being cleared as a suspect, he made a public plea for anyone with information to come forward. From the other interviews with those closest to Cortney, investigators were able to confirm her whereabouts on June 7 up until she was dropped off at her residence. To help spread the word about Cortney's disappearance, her friends and family ran a social media campaign using the hashtag #HelpFindCourtney. Police reviewed Cortney's social media, but it did not reveal anything that could lead to her being found. Not long after she disappeared, investigators canvassed Alice Drive, the street Smith lived on. They asked anyone if they had seen Cortney since her disappearance, but no one had seen her in 3 weeks, despite having seen her numerous times in the months prior. Properties in the area were also searched, but nothing of value was found. To help generate leads, video stills obtained from security footage of the Esso gas station on Elizabeth Avenue in St. John's were released, showing Cortney purchasing items a few hours before her disappearance. In June 2017, 3 vigils were held in order to keep the case in the public eye. Each one was held where members of Cortney's family resided. One occurred in Mount Pearl, where Lisa resides. One happened in St. Lawrence, where her father and brother still live. And the third was in Marystown, where several of her relatives are located. On June 27, 2017, a woman walking along a trail in Mount Pearl, some 600 meters from Cortney's residence, came across jewelry and a pair of broken glasses. She contacted police, but the items were later confirmed to not belong to the missing woman. That same day, police observed Smith drinking at the Jack Astor's on Harbor Drive in St. John's, and he was later seen purchasing beet at Antles Irving on Torbay Road. As he wasn't allowed to enter a place that served alcohol at the time, he was arrested and placed under police custody. On June 28, 2017, investigators, armed with a search warrant, converged on the two-unit property Smith and his father owned. While they wouldn't confirm at the time if the search was connected to Cortney's disappearance, they did maintain a watch on the house by setting up a tent in the backyard. They ended up removing a number of items from the property, including Smith's truck, which was later returned to him. To help raise awareness about the case, digital billboards around St. John's featured Cortney's photo and prompted passers-by to call the police with any information. Her family also created posters with the same information. On June 30, 2017, the RNC announced they had classified Cortney's disappearance as a homicide and, as a result, were concerned for her safety and had referred the case to the Major Crimes Unit. They also shared that they'd identified more than one person of interest. During this press conference, they released residential security footage, which showed Cortney leaving her home on Wellington Crescent at 7:52 p.m. on June 7 and walking toward the area of Lindbergh Crescent and Ruth Avenue. At 7:54 p.m., the footage showed her walking down the street when a black GMC Sierra pickup truck with a Browning camouflage deer-head diesel on the passenger side back window pulled up beside her. After she entered the passenger side, the truck swung back around and drove in the opposite direction. Police shared that they believe Cortney was taken to a secluded, wooded or less traveled area a short drive from where she was picked up. As such, they conducted searches in the Galway development, in the wooded areas off Outer Ring Road, the Sea Cove area of Conception Bay South, and Powers Pond. They also asked those in the same areas, as well as residents living around Lindbergh Crescent, Ruth Avenue, Old Placentia Road, the Trans-Canada Highway and Michener Avenue, to review dash-cam and home security footage. During this time, numerous volunteer searches occurred, headed by Cortney's family. Dubbed Cortney's Search Angels, they looked throughout the Avalon Peninsula, as well as Bay Bulls and Seal Cove, on foot and via ATV. To help raise money for the search efforts, as well as fund a reward, the family set up a GoFundMe page. During a search of Paddy's Pond on July 2, 2017, volunteer searchers came across an item that was later confirmed to belong to Cortney. It was discovered near Torbayman's Pond by the Irving Station, west of St. John's. This prompted police to conduct a ground and water search of the area later in the day and into July 3. Consisting of the RNC and the Rovers ground search and rescue, it saw the shoreline scoured and the bottom of the Torbaymans dragged. After Cortney's disappearance, Philip Smith continued to get into trouble with the law. He was later accused of committing more crimes on the day Cortney was last seen, including driving while disqualified and breaching a peace order in relation to Lisa Lake. On August 9, 2017, he pleaded guilty to breaching the condition meant to keep him away from Cortney, admitting he'd picked her up from Michener Avenue on the night she went missing. However, he didn't reveal where they went or where he last saw her. He also pleaded guilty to the drinking, while prohibited charge relating back to his June 27, 2017 arrest. In relation to the charges, Smith was sentenced to 90 days in custody. With time served, he was only due to serve 24 days. While the 90-day sentence was agreed upon by both the Crown and the defense, Smith was told by the presiding judge that he would have received a longer sentence if not for the previously agreed-upon terms. He was released on August 24, 2017, after 16 days, on good behavior, and was given a one-year driving prohibition. In the fall of 2017, Smith was relieved of his military duties due to his criminal convictions, this 8 years after he enrolled in the Army Primary Reserves. While he hadn't served on any overseas missions, at the time he was relieved he was a corporal and primary reservist with the 37 Combat Engineer Regiment in St. John's. During this time, an administrative review took place to determine what the next course of action would be and whether he should officially be discharged from the military. In October 2017, Cortney was one of the 117 women remembered during the In Her Name vigil, organized by the St. John's Status of Women Council and the St. John's Native Friendship Council. Lisa was present to read her daughter's name, but became overcome with emotion and was unable to do so. On October 31, 2017, Smith called his family, saying he was going to kill himself. Concerned, they contacted the authorities, who put searchers on standby an hour away at Bellevue Beach, where the Smith family had a cabin. At 3 a.m. on November 1, a sniffer dog located Smith's body, although police wouldn't initially confirm or deny the suicide, only saying they were investigating a sudden death in the Bellevue Beach area and there was no risk to the public. Smith's death prompted investigators to conduct a thorough search of Bellevue Beach. Joined by the Rovers, the Avalon North Wolverines, and Central Avalon search and rescue teams, they searched for evidence connected to Cortney's disappearance, but came up empty. In the weeks leading up to his death, the RNC had a difficult time keeping tabs on Smith. When questioned, a friend said he'd seen the deceased in St. John's hours before his death. While noting there was nothing different about his behavior at this time, he did share that Smith had been feeling troubled all year and cited his May 2017 suicide attempt. Upon learning of Smith's death, the Lake family offered their condolences to the Smith family. Before his death, Lisa shared that he had been served documents to appear in court on November 7, 2017 in relation to a peace bond against him, as the previous one had expired. Shortly after his death, the RNC's Major Crimes Unit released new images of Smith and his truck, dated June 8, 2017, which showed him at a local Ultramar gas station. They did this in the hopes anyone would remember seeing him or have any relevant dashcam footage. In November 2017, a woman's body was found along a wooded trail cut into the site of Mount Seo, a few hundred meters from the O'Brien Farm heritage property, located within St. John's. While the death was deemed suspicious, it was determined the body did not belong to Cortney. During this month, the Grace Sparkles House, a shelter for women on the Burin Peninsula, announced a new bursary to support the families of missing or murdered women of intimate partner violence. Conversations in relation to this had begun with the idea of holding a community gathering in honor of Cortney, later spurred on by the murder of another woman named Ryanna Grywacheski. On December 4, 2017, a fundraising dinner and vigil occurred, honoring Cortney, with the money raised meant to help families with search efforts, setting up a trust fund for children, helping with funeral costs and the building of monuments and markers. In December 2017, police received new information about Cortney, which prompted them to conduct a 2-day search of the abandoned 100-acre Smallwood farm near Bellevue Beach, just off the Route 201 exit from the Trans-Canada Highway. 5 search and rescue teams consisting of 122 people moved shoulder to shoulder across the farm's fields, forests, and buildings. The search lasted 5 days, but nothing was uncovered. Police have stated that Cortney's cell phone hasn't been used since her disappearance, and her bank account has been left untouched. As well, she has not been active on social media. During the Victoria Day long weekend in May 2018, the Lake family asked campers to keep an eye out for any of Cortney's personal belongings. On the first anniversary of her disappearance, Cortney's loved ones held a mourning mass in her memory, something they would again do in June 2019 on the second anniversary. As of 2019, the search efforts for Cortney have gone cold. Despite both official searches and over 100 conducted by volunteers, nothing of value has been found and no arrests have been made. Police continue to conduct interviews and gather new information in relation to the case and say they've received thousands of tips from the public. They've also shared that they've reviewed hours of security and dashcam footage. Cortney's family feels someone in the community has information about the case. They keep in constant contact with the RNC. 1. The only theory in the case is that Cortney was murdered by her boyfriend, Philip Smith. This is held by both the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary and the Lake family. While he was never publicly named as a person of interest in the early days of the investigation, after his death the authorities shared he had been their only suspect. Those involved in the investigation believe Cortney to be deceased. In order to keep Cortney's case in the public eye, her family set up the Help Us Find Cortney Facebook group. On July 3, 2017, Cortney's cousin, Andrew Warren, competed in the Targa Newfoundland Bambina Road competition. He did this in her honor, placing decals of her image on the car. He ended up winning the competition and said he knew she was watching him compete. Lisa has shared that she'll never fully get over her daughter's death. While she does have her good days, she says she still has bad ones. Each year, the family holds a Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Cortney's honor, as the season was her favorite time of year. Taking place at St. David's Park in Mount Pearl, the annual event is also used to shed light on issues surrounding violence against women. Hot chocolate is served, and carols are sung as the tree is lit with purple lights, the missing woman's favorite color. Currently, Jason has custody of his and Cortney's son, Oliver. He says Oliver knows his mother is missing and misses her dearly. Cortney, along with other missing women from Newfoundland, continue to be annually honored by the In Her Name Vigil. In July 2019, Cortney's father placed a tombstone in St. Lawrence Cemetery, which features the poem A Face in the Clouds engraved on the back. As her body has yet to be found, there are no remains buried beneath it. Cortney Lake went missing from Mount Pearl, Newfoundland on June 7, 2017. She was 24 years old and was last seen wearing a gray and white Helly Hansen jacket with pink trim, black yoga pants, glasses, a multicolored plaid shirt, and dark gray and white Nike sneakers with bright pink laces. She was also carrying a Guess purse and matching wallet. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5'83" and weighed approximately 110 to 120 pounds. She has light brown hair. While she lived in Mount Pearl, her family has connections throughout the Burin Peninsula. Currently, the RNC have classified her case as a homicide. If you have any information regarding the case, you can contact the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary at 709-729-8000. Tips can also be submitted anonymously via Crime Stoppers by calling 1-800-222-8477.
Number 3.
During the week of Jennifer's disappearance, Dean was away duck hunting in Northwest Arm, Newfoundland. Not wanting Dina to be home alone during this time, both he and his soon-to-be ex-wife agreed Jennifer would stay at the house with her. Jennifer was reluctant at first, as she didn't want to be alone in the house, but upon the reassurance that Dean would be 45 minutes away, she agreed. According to her family, her routine for the week was to attend work each day at the local hospital before driving to St. Lunaire Griquet for dinner with her father and later returning to the house in St. Anthony. At 6 p.m. on November 30, 2016, Jennifer and her sister, Yvonne, ate dinner at their father's house. Afterward, Jennifer drove Yvonne to the hospital in St. Anthony for a scheduled appointment, after which she was planning on going to the house to lie down, as she had a headache. During the drive to the hospital, she received a text and call from Dean, asking when she would be home. Jennifer arrived home at 8 p.m., where she drew a bath and texted Dina to tell her she was going to bed because she had a headache. The next morning, she was planning on leaving for work directly from the house in St. Anthony. That night, Dina arrived after her 9:30 p.m. curfew, so she didn't check in with her mother upon getting home. Once there, she saw her father had returned to the house, where he told her he'd returned to pick up some duck decoys he'd forgotten in the garage. After this, the pair said goodnight to each other and Dina snuck into her bedroom so as to not wake her mother and alert her to her late arrival home. Dina has stated she doesn't know if her mother was in the house at this time, as her bedroom door was closed. At 7 a.m. on December 1, 2016, Jennifer's phone alarm went off, waking Dina. She went into her mother's room to see why she wasn't waking up, but found no sign of her. While her phone, purse and coat were still in the room, and her car still in the driveway, There was no note indicating where she could have gone. Concerned, Dina called her paternal grandmother and her father, who both came right to the house. Jennifer's brother, Glenn, also stopped by, and it was discovered she had left her keys in the ignition of her car. Jennifer was officially reported missing to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police later that day. When they first got involved, the RCMP didn't initially suspect any foul play, feeling Jennifer had simply left town of her own accord, despite speaking with her friends, family and colleagues who said otherwise. Glenn feels the authorities didn't take his sister's disappearance seriously enough, despite him having shared his fears that she wouldn't have left without notice. Marina had a similar reaction to the RCMP at first, as she was under the impression her mother could have stayed with a friend. She didn't believe she would have left without informing anyone. Not put off by the RCMP's initial theory, Jennifer's friends and family put up missing persons flyers across St. Anthony. The RCMP also conducted numerous land and sea searches during this time, which would eventually cause the focus of the investigation to shift. These searches saw extra RCMP resources assigned to the search, as well as the assistance of the local chapter of the Canadian Rangers and a rescue team from Roddickton, Newfoundland, whose volunteers knew the area well. On December 2 and 3, 2016, investigators searched the town with the use of a sniffer dog from the K9. The dog didn't pick up Jennifer's scent beyond the house, and searches of the harbor and nearby bodies of water, which included the use of a dive team, didn't uncover any evidence. Local residents were asked to check their properties for anything out of the ordinary, and on the fifth day of searching, a helicopter got involved but failed to find Jennifer. Dean did not participate in the searches for Jennifer at this time. On December 7, 2016, 7 days after Jennifer disappeared, the RCMP changed the status of the investigation to suspicious. This resulted in her and Dean's home being locked down and a forensics team being brought in, where they found no signs of a struggle or suspicious activity. Her family has questioned why it took so long for investigators to cordon off the home, as over 100 people had been in and out over the previous week, thus potentially contaminating anything that could be considered evidence. After the initial search for Jennifer was completed, the police presence in St. Anthony was reduced to only officers from the local RCMP detachment. Early into the investigation, Jennifer's mother-in-law and Dean's mother, Ruby Penny, offered a $25,000 reward for information that could lead to a resolution to the case, and she publicly stated her son wasn't involved in his wife's disappearance. She also shared her hopes that Jennifer had simply run off, as she didn't think she couldn't handle it if she were dead. However, many have said they feel the reward was Ruby's way of deflecting attention off of Dean. To help raise money, to bring in a vessel, to look for Jennifer in the water near Fishing Point Park, the town organized a bingo fundraiser, which raised $22,500. In 2017, Gary Hillier helped organize the search, but given poor weather, the boat was only able to search for 1 day and didn't find anything. In early 2017, businesses and organizations in St. Anthony placed posters featuring Jennifer's photo in their windows, and people began attaching stickers to their cars in the hopes of spreading awareness about her disappearance. Billboards were also placed near the local Tim Hortons and at Fishing Point Park, and Jennifer's niece, Leanne, created 300 car magnets. In October 2017, the RCMP's Major Crimes Unit from Corner Brook, Newfoundland, visited St. Anthony to do some additional questioning in the case. However, they have not revealed any specifics regarding this. In December 2017, around 100 people from throughout the Northern Peninsula gathered at the Fishing Point Lighthouse to release balloons in Jennifer's memory. The CBC's investigative news show, The Fifth Estate, covered the case in a 2-part investigation, which saw reporter Mark Kelly interview Jennifer's family and friends, including Dean. As a result of the investigation, and on the urging of the RCMP and Dean's lawyer, the Supreme Court of Newfoundland and Labrador granted a publication ban on the case, which prevents the media from releasing the names of anyone the RCMP has or had identified as being involved in Jennifer's disappearance. After the Fifth Estate aired their investigation, the RCMP in St. John's, Newfoundland contacted the family and informed them that the case is still a priority for the Major Crimes Unit. Dean's lawyer has told him not to publicly comment on the disappearance. While he knows those around him suspect him, he denies any involvement, saying he was down hunting at the cabin in Northwest Arm the entire week. He claims Jennifer was texting another man on the night she went missing, but people have questioned whether Dean's assumption of the affair could have been why he himself had texted her on the night she went missing. Jennifer's friends have also questioned why Dean hadn't initially brought the duck decoys with him to the cabin, as he was an experienced hunter. The RCMP have not publicly commented on whether they consider Dean to be a person of interest in the case, but they have searched his home, truck and cabin. Marina has shared her own doubts regarding her father and says she hasn't ruled him out as being involved in her mother's disappearance. In 2018, she asked him to take a lie detector test or else risk never seeing her again, but declined to take one on the advice of his lawyer. On the second anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance, the Hillier family organized a walk, which took them to the local RCMP detachment and the driveway of the family home. In December 2018, the RCMP approached the Supreme Court to keep numerous items they'd collected throughout the investigation, a request that was granted, with an end date of December 15, 2019. It is one of a series of extensions the authorities had received since the investigation began. In June 2019, rumors began to spread around St. Anthony that bones were found inside a discarded air mattress in Hare Bay, Newfoundland. Marina received no response when she contacted the RCMP about these rumors, so she contacted the fisherman who found the mattress, who told her no bones had been discovered. In October 2019, over 40 rocks were painted in Jennifer's memory and placed beneath the missing sign in Fishing Point Park. As local residents started taking and hiding them, a pastime often undertaken by children as a game, the family had to request the rocks not be removed from the location. This was followed by a memorial event later in the year, which included a walk from the local Lions Club to the RCMP detachment and back again. Jennifer's family and friends feel the RCMP investigation has been flawed since the start and have shared their frustration over how the case has been handled. They currently have no hope that investigators will be able to help and say any conversations they have with them are void of any pertinent information. While the RCMP have never named a suspect or person of interest, they are currently treating Jennifer's disappearance as a kidnapping and possible homicide. Despite not having organized any recent searches, they've interviewed over 100 people and are currently waiting for someone with information to come forward. Volunteer searches for Jennifer still occur, headed by her friends and family. Marina has offered up the remaining money from the search fund, which currently sits at $8,500, to anyone who can provide a lead in the case. Jennifer's disappearance has been pretty jarring for the community of St. Anthony, as 3 other individuals have gone missing from the area since 2002. Mildred Daw Sexton went missing on April 16, 2002 at the age of 47. Andrew Sexton was only 21 when he went missing on February 26, 2006, whilst on a snowmobiling trip with friends, and Clean Smith went missing on April 2, 2011 at the age of 30. All 3 disappearances remain unsolved. There are currently 3 main theories in relation to Jennifer's disappearance. Given how tight-lipped the RCMP have been about the investigation, it's difficult to say which is the correct one. 1. The initial theory held in the case was that Jennifer left because she needed a break from what was going on in her life. Given her upcoming divorce and the numerous changes occurring in her life around the time of her disappearance, it's been theorized Jennifer simply left in order to start a new life. However, everyone who knows her says she wouldn't have left without notice, especially given how much she loves her children. 2. The main theory held by Jennifer's friends and family is that she was abducted and murdered. The majority of them feel Dean was somehow involved, given his behavior in the weeks leading up to Jennifer's disappearance, but given the lack of evidence in the case and how little the RCMP have shared about their investigation, it's difficult to say what actually happened to her on the night of November 30, 2016. 3. A final theory in the case is that Jennifer fled St. Anthony in order to get away from Dean. This is supported by her reported fear of Dean in the lead-up to her disappearance. However, If this were the case, there would have most likely been sightings of Jennifer either elsewhere in Newfoundland or in another Canadian province, or there would have been other types of evidence to support this train of thought. As a result of Jennifer's disappearance, the residents of St. Anthony have begun locking their cars and doors and have stopped walking alone at night. The Hillier family have created a Facebook page to help keep Jennifer's case in the public eye. Jennifer's loved ones say they will hold a memorial every year until she is found. Jennifer Hillier-Penney went missing from Husky Drive in St. Anthony, Newfoundland on November 30, 2016. She was 38 years old, and what she was last seen wearing is currently unknown. At the time of her disappearance, she stood at 5'73" and weighed between 160 to 170 pounds. She has blonde hair and green eyes. Currently, her case has been deemed suspicious, with the RCMP investigating it as a kidnapping and possible homicide. If you have any information regarding the case, you can contact the St. Anthony RCMP at 709-454-3543 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.
Number 4.
Carl was last seen on June 10, 1983 in El Dorado, Ohio. According to reports, he met a friend at a residence at 3366 Hamburg Road. He was never seen or heard from again after this meeting. A few days later, Carl's family discovered his 1973 Chevrolet Impala at a truck stop in Lynn, Indiana. However, they didn't realize he was missing until 2 weeks had passed. The last time anyone in his family saw him was at his mother's house, where he had been painting the ceiling. This was before his trip to El Dorado. The Richmond Police Department were, and still are, the chief law enforcement agency working the case. Authorities in Randolph County, which is located near the border of Indiana and Ohio, were also involved. A search was conducted of the farmhouse on Hamburg Road, but no traces of Carl were uncovered. Investigators did find a shotgun slug they believe may be tied to the case, but they remain uncertain. Additional searches were conducted in Richmond, as well as Preble County, Ohio, where the village of El Dorado is located, but they yielded nothing of significance. In 1985, the Richmond Police Department publicly announced they believed Carl to be deceased and that his probable death was the result of a homicide. They stated it's possible his death is related to 2 drug trafficking murders that occurred in the area at the time of his disappearance, but have not publicly stated what evidence, if any, they have leading them in this direction. On September 30, 2014, Rhonda hosted a birthday remembrance for Carl at her home in hopes of keeping the case alive and encouraging law enforcement to continue searching for her brother. The event was open to the public. In February 2016, a billboard at exit 156 on I-70 in Richmond featured Carl's image and the numbers citizens could call if they had any information related to his disappearance. Supporters of Rhonda helped raise the funds needed. As of 2019, there have been no recent searches for Carl, and no new leads have arose, despite his disappearance having been reviewed by every cold case department in Ohio and Indiana. The case has involved investigators from 2 states and 3 counties, all of which feel foul play was involved. Currently, authorities in Randolph County feel Carl's disappearance and subsequent death occurred in Preble County, but nothing has been found in the area. Currently, the only theory in the case is held by law enforcement, who feel Carl's disappearance is somehow related to the 2 aforementioned drug-related homicides. However, given the lack of evidence and leads in the case, it's difficult to prove if it is related or a separate occurrence. Carl's parents have since passed away. However, his brother and sister are still alive. Rhonda is still actively searching for her brother. She has stated that she feels there is more to the story and wishes to keep the case and Carl's name in the public eye. Carl J. Holland Jr. went missing from 3366 Hamburg Road in El Dorado, Ohio on June 10, 1983. He was 23 years old and was last seen wearing a blue denim jacket, tennis shoes and a pair of blue jeans. At the time of his disappearance, he stood at 6'33" and weighed approximately 160 pounds. He has black hair and green eyes and has a burn scar on one of his knees. Currently, his case is classified as endangered missing. If alive, he would be 60 years old. If you have information regarding the case, you can contact the Richmond Police Department at 765-983-7247 or 765-983-7379.
Number 5.
On December 1, 1984, Angela Westberry and Theresa Hickmon were seen with two Caucasian males leaving Jacksonville, Duval County, Florida. The four were aboard a 422 or 462 1960 Richardson boat called the Sea Fever, which featured a white hull and twin cabins with a cockpit between them. The Sea Fever was last seen on December 14, 1984, when U.S. Customs spotted it in the Grand Cayman Islands. It's unknown where it had been between then and the day it left Jacksonville, and it's also unknown if both Angela and Theresa were on board at the time. What is known is that the Sea Fever was never seen again. After she hadn't seen or heard from her, Angela's sister reported her as missing. It's believed both she and Theresa were going on a vacation to the Bahamas aboard the boat at the time of their disappearances. Currently, the date of Angela's disappearance is listed as December 1, 1984, the day the Sea Fever left Jacksonville. Theresa's disappearance, however, is listed over a month and a half later, on January 16, 1985. Authorities haven't stated why this is, but some have speculated there could be information that hasn't been publicly released, as Theresa was initially listed as an accomplice to Angela's disappearance before being named a missing person. Since there is very little information available regarding Angela and Theresa's disappearances, online sleuths have come up with numerous theories. 1. The first theory in the case is that the Sea Fever may have sunk whilst out at sea. Given the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean, it's not out of the question to assume that a boat could sink and not be found. However, opponents of this theory state that it's unlikely, as Angela was the only one aboard to have been reported missing. 2. A second theory is that Angela and Theresa could have been murdered by the two men they were seeing boarding the boat with, and their bodies thrown into the sea. This would explain why the two of them have never been seen again, and why the two men with them have seemingly disappeared. It's possible they could have gone into hiding to avoid questioning and/or prosecution if they did indeed murder the girls. 3. Some believe Angela and Theresa could have vanished of their own accord, meaning they planned to go missing when they boarded the Sea Fever. However, this doesn't account for why the boat itself has never been seen again. If the two girls had chosen to go missing, why would the boat they were on also disappear, instead of docking in another country or port? 4. Two final theories in the case are brought up by a WebSleuths user, who says the girls could have either been involved in drug trafficking or were forced into human trafficking. According to this user, it was common in the 1980s for drugs to be brought into the United States via Florida's coastline, so it's possible the two men Angela and Theresa were with were involved in the drug trade. Perhaps the girls didn't know what they were getting themselves into. In regards to the human trafficking theory, it is possible, as it's not unheard of for young girls to be abducted and trafficked internationally. However, given the lack of sightings, it's difficult to say if this theory holds any weight. Angela Lorraine Westberry was last seen in Jacksonville, Florida on December 1, 1984. She was 17 years old. While what she was wearing is currently unknown, she does have her ears pierced. She stood at 4'10" and weighed approximately 95 pounds. Her curly hair is described as blonde red, and she has blue eyes. Some agencies spell her first name Angelia and her middle name Lorraine. Theresa M. Hickmon's date of disappearance is listed as January 16, 1985. She was 20 years old at the time, and what she was last seen wearing is currently unknown. She stood at 5'43" and weighed approximately 120 pounds. She has brown hair and hazel eyes. Currently, Angela's case is classified as a non-family abduction, while Theresa is classified as endangered missing. Foul play is suspected in both their disappearances. If alive, Angela would be 52 years old and Theresa would be 55 years old. If you have any information regarding the case, you can contact the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office at 904-630-0500 or the Duval County Sheriff's Office at 904-630-2627.
Number 6.
On March 11, 1982, Melody contacted police to say her daughter had been abducted from a shopping cart while the two were at the Giant Eagle supermarket at 23rd Street and Jane Street, located in South Side. According to Melody, she'd turned away for a moment, only to notice her daughter was missing when she went to face the cart. While official reports state Nicole's disappearance occurred on March 11, Melody and Widman claim it happened on March 9. After interviewing those at the supermarket that day, police became skeptical of Melody's story, as no one remembered seeing Nicole in the store that day. Several days after Nicole's disappearance, a letter was found in Melody's home, which stated Nikki was dead and buried. It was allegedly from the young girl's abductor, but handwriting analysis determined it to have probably been written by Melody. Initially, Melody's husband was investigated as having been possibly involved in his daughter's disappearance, but as he was still living in Texas at the time, he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. Melody was given a polygraph test, but the results were inconclusive. In May 1986, a tipster contacted a then-lieutenant with Pittsburgh's homicide squad and told him investigators should contact an inmate named Timothy Widman in regards to a cold case. At this point, Widman and Melody were no longer together. Upon being interviewed, he confessed to Nicole's murder. According to Widman, he had been sleeping on the couch after a drug binge that had lasted several days. Nicole had bitten his toe, waking him up. In response, he slapped her, and she fell to the floor, hitting her head and falling into a semi-conscious state. Unaware of how injured Nicole was, Widman called Melody into the room, and the young mother put her daughter to bed. The next day, it was discovered that Nicole was dead, so Widman placed her body in a plastic green garbage bag, after which he drove to the area of Timberland Road and Abstract Avenue in Brookline, Pennsylvania, where he buried the body in a shallow grave. He told investigators he said a prayer before leaving the scene. According to Widman, it was Melody's idea to report her daughter as having been abducted as a means to cover up her death. To try and corroborate Widman's story, a cadaver dog search was conducted in the area. However, while the dog indicated that a body had been in the area, none was recovered. This could have been a result of a pipeline excavation that was happening in the area at the time. Despite not having a body, Widman was charged with involuntary manslaughter. However, the charges were dropped in 1987, as at the time there was a law in place that stated a body was needed in order to convict someone of murder as a means to safeguard against mentally ill persons making false confessions. Eventually, Melody moved to Garland, Texas and illegally remarried. In June 1986, she was arrested and charged with felony counts of providing false reports and hindering prosecution in regards to her daughter's disappearance. After being extradited back to Pennsylvania, investigators tried to get her to corroborate the story Widman had shared, but she stuck to her version of events. Some of the charges against Melody were dropped, as Widman too refused to testify against his ex-girlfriend. In the end, she pleaded guilty to the remaining charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison for filing a false police report and for one count of bigamy. In 1988, the Supreme Court changed the law that had previously prevented Widman from being prosecuted for Nicole's death. Upon being amended, it now stated that a person could be presumed dead after having been missing for 7 years, so, in 2006, a judge agreed with the deputy district attorney that the charges against Widman could be reinstated. In October 2006, a second search was conducted with 2 cadaver dogs. Both sensed the presence of a body, but were unable to recover one. However, despite any fresh evidence being presented, the state moved forward with the case. In May 2007, Widman again admitted to Nicole's murder as a way to avoid being charged with homicide. He instead pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 2 to 4 years in prison, with credit for time already served. After being sentenced, he apologized to Nicole's surviving relatives. The primary theory in the case is that Widman was the one responsible for Nicole's death and the disposal of her body. Widman's confession corroborates this, as does his conviction in relation to the crime. However, as Nicole's body has never been found, it's difficult to say for sure if what Widman said is the true course of events. The other theory is that Nicole was abducted from the Giant Eagle supermarket. While Widman has said Melody's initial story about the abduction is a lie, The young mother would not deviate from her version of events. As a result, some agencies still list Nicole's disappearance as a non-family abduction. Melody passed away in a Texas hospital in 2001 after undergoing back surgery. Timothy passed away in 2011 at the age of 56. Nicole Lynn Bryner went missing from South Side, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in March 1982. She was 3 years old and was last seen wearing a green velour t-shirt, a gray turtleneck sweater, a blue jacket, blue jeans with a star on the right rear pocket, and brown suede shoes. At the time of her disappearance, she was 263 and weighed approximately 35 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. Currently, her case is classified as endangered missing. If alive, she would be 40 years old. If you have any information regarding the case, you can contact the Pittsburgh Police Department at 412-255-2888.
Number 7.
Over Easter in 2012, Heather went to stay with family as she and Paul were having problems at the time. On April 9, Crystal dropped her sister back home at around 6:30 a.m. before she herself went to an appointment. The pair had planned to reconnect later in the day. However, when Crystal called the home to ask when Heather wanted to be picked up, Paul said she was asleep. At 10:30 p.m. that night, Paul claims to have left the pair's home in order to buy Heather a Blizzard from the nearby Dairy Queen located at the corner of US 220 and Wirtz Road. He was gone for a total of 10 minutes, and when he returned he found that Heather was nowhere to be found. Crying, he contacted the family to inform them of this, saying she had left behind her car, cell phone and purse. On April 11, Paul officially reported Heather as missing. The reason for the delay was due to the fact that Heather was known to leave home for a day or so at a time. However, she had always kept in touch with her family and regularly checked in about her daughter. She had done neither in this instance. Upon being notified of Heather's disappearance, investigators interviewed both friends and family. Crystal, in particular, stated that her sister was a dedicated mother who wouldn't have taken off without first notifying someone in the family. A massive search was launched, which included a helicopter from the Virginia State Police, search teams from Franklin County's Department of Safety, a civilian's cadaver dog, and the county's Swift Water Rescue Team, which utilized a raft and cadaver dog to search the Blackwater River. A grid search was also conducted of a half-mile radius around Heather's home, but both searches turned up no evidence. Police had stated they don't believe Paula's allegations to be related to her daughter's disappearance. In June 2012, investigators discovered evidence that something violent had occurred in the home Heather and Paul shared, noting the missing woman's blood was found on a doorknob. 2 months into the investigation, police said they had a person of interest. This person, who has never been publicly identified, had initially been cooperative, but later began to give varying accounts surrounding the circumstances surrounding Heather's disappearance. In April 2013, the Hodges family held a fundraising event to help raise money for a reward and awareness about the case. Concluding in a special tribute to Heather, it featured a 50/50ths raffle, door prizes, a silent auction, numerous activities for children and a jar where attendees could give donations. In June 2013, the Franklin County Sheriff announced the case had become a criminal investigation, while also stating it had been investigated as a major crime since day one. In 2014, court documents revealed Paul's version of events. However, investigators have not publicly shared whether or not they have been able to confirm his story. On October 10, 2014, Q Center for Missing Persons embarked on the On the Road to Remember tour, which traveled 4,000 miles across 11 states. It highlighted 110 missing persons, unsolved murders and unidentified persons, and aimed to bring in new information about these cases. For the Rocky Mount stop, Paula teamed up with the organization's Virginia State Director Shaun White to help shed a light on Heather's disappearance. In 2015, investigators issued a second search warrant on the cell phone Heather left behind, a black Nokia. With access to technology that wasn't available in 2012, they hoped to uncover who Heather had been talking to in the lead up to her disappearance and when such contact had occurred. However, they haven't shared if they were able to find any new information to honor Heather. Her family had hoped to build a memorial along the Blackwater River, consisting of benches on a 10x102 space near the boat pull-out on US 220 South, as people had been leaving balloons, cards and flowers near a tree stump in the area. However, due to the missing woman's 2008 felony conviction, Franklin County prohibited such a memorial from being erected, as outlined in a 2013 law that prevents those convicted of felonies from having a public memorial. When a meeting was held regarding the matter, an unanimous vote upheld the law in this instance. Undeterred by the county's ruling, the family eventually set up the memorial, consisting of a bench and garden, on private property along the river after a local man offered up part of his land. The memorial is not only in memory of Heather, but of another local man, Christopher Douthit, who went missing in 2013. In December 2013, B.B. Shaver's Shopo organization held an event in Lynchburg, Virginia to raise awareness for missing girls in the area. Heather's family and friends were in attendance. In June 2014, Help Save the Next Girl set up a booth at the Walmart in South Boston, Virginia to help raise awareness for those who are missing, including Heather. It's a non-profit organization set up in honor of Morgan Harrington, who went missing in 2009 and was found murdered in Charlottesville, Virginia. Jesse L. Matthew Jr. is currently serving 4 consecutive life sentences with no chance for parole for her murder and that of Hannah Graham in 2014. Over the years, different investigators have been assigned to the case, and all those currently working on it have described it as highly suspicious. In 2018, they publicly stated they had a suspect in mind, but had yet to file any charges, as they were still collecting sufficient evidence. They have shared that not having a body has made it harder for them to solve the case, but are utilizing every tool and resource made available to investigate each lead that's called in. Due to the active nature of the investigation, police are unable to say too much about the case. In December 2018, Paul was sentenced to 7.5 years in relation to a July 2017 arrest for felony abduction by force intimidation. He had entered an Alford plea, which meant he had pled guilty, while at the same time maintaining his innocence. This arrest is unrelated to Heather's disappearance. In April 2019, the Aware Foundation erected 4 billboards around Roanoke, Virginia, which featured Heather's image and the words "Never Lose Hope." Funded by a private donation, these billboards, which were situated on Route 419, Route 220 and Old Cave Spring Road, marked the 7th anniversary of the missing woman's disappearance. One theory held in the case is that Paul was somehow involved. This is due to the fact he was the last known person to see Heather alive before she disappeared, as well as the phone call he'd had with Crystal on April 9. Crystal has shared that Heather confided in her 2 months before her disappearance, saying that if something happened to her to know it wasn't a suicide and to never stop looking for her. Paul has not been charged in relation to the case and police have not shared whether he is a suspect or person of interest. 2. A second theory is that an unknown person is involved. However, to what extent is currently up for speculation. It's unknown if Heather was abducted or if she left of her own accord, given the lack of evidence in the case. However, given the blood found in her and Paul's home, it's believed she did not leave of her own free will and that foul play is involved. On the anniversary of Heather's disappearance each year, friends and family hold a candlelight vigil in her honor. The Hodges family holds out hope the police will one day solve the case. They've kept in regular contact with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office and say they are pleased with the progress made thus far. They acknowledge that Heather is most likely deceased due to her lack of communication. Heather Hodges went missing from her Shady Lane residence in Rocky Mount, Virginia on April 9, 2012. She was 22 years old. What she was wearing at the time is currently unknown. At the time of her disappearance, she stood anywhere from 4'10" to 5'23" and weighed approximately 100 pounds. She has blonde hair and blue eyes and has the word Tink tattooed on her lower back. Currently, her case is classified as endangered missing. If alive, she would be 30 years old. If you have information regarding the case, you can contact the Franklin County Sheriff's Office at 540-263-0845 or 540-483-3000. Tips can also be phoned in anonymously to Crime Line at 540-344-8500.
Number 8.
July 7, 1970 was Lorraine's 19th birthday. To celebrate, the family were putting on a special dinner, which Denise and her mother were preparing. Before starting the preparations, Denise had spent the late afternoon speaking with her boyfriend, who was out of town visiting a sick relative. While the pair were getting dinner ready, Lorraine phoned the apartment to let them know she had finished her shift at AT&T and would be taking the subway home. Not long after this, their mother smelt what she believed to be alcohol on Denise's breath, and the pair got into an argument, with a threat being made that their father would be informed. The result of this was Denise storming out of the apartment at around 5 p.m. without any of her personal belongings. The last reported sighting of her came from a neighbor coming into the building, who saw her climb over a fence behind the apartment and leave the complex via a nearby Mets building. As Denise had not returned home by July 8, her parents phoned the authorities to report her as missing. The police immediately launched their investigation, firstly searching the apartment, located at 4815 46th Street. They also searched the nearby streets of Greenwich Village. The search of the apartment showed that Denise had taken no directions with her, and nothing was uncovered to indicate which direction she'd taken upon hopping the fence. Upon learning of her disappearance, Denise's boyfriend returned to Queens and helped in the search for her. Early into the investigation, investigators ruled him out as a suspect, and her family has stated that they do not believe him to have been involved. Denise's mother left the dining table set for a week after her daughter's disappearance. The missing girl's sisters have also stated that the sight of her empty bed made them cry each night. At one point in the investigation, the Sheehy family received a tip that Denise had been spotted in Maine. This resulted in the family driving to the area, but the tip led nowhere. Denise's parents looked over numerous photos of unidentified dead women throughout the course of the investigation, in the chance that one of them was their missing daughter. However, none of the photos shown were that of Denise. The missing girl has also been ruled out as numerous Jane Does located throughout the United States. Denise has never been declared legally dead. 1. The main theory held in relation to the case is that Denise ran off in order to blow off some steam and cool off, but was abducted or possibly injured after leaving her apartment. This is supported by the limited sightings of Denise after her disappearance and the lack of evidence found. However, this has also resulted in investigators being unsure about what actually happened to the missing girl, and what happened to her after she hopped the fence remains unknown. Denise's father has since passed away, but her mother and sisters are still alive and hope that one day their loved one will be located. On February 20th of each year, Lorraine lights a church candle for her missing sister. Denise Sheehy went missing from the 4800 block of 46th Street in the Woodside neighborhood of Queens, New York on July 7, 1970. She was 16 years old and was last seen wearing size XS blue shorts, a red and white top, size 5.5 white clog sandals, a gold boys' school ring, and a gold ring with her initials DS on it. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5'33" and weighed approximately 103 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes, and her ears are pierced. She had received dental care throughout her life, and her teeth show signs of restoration. Currently, the case is classified as lost, injured, missing. If alive, she would be 65 years old. If you have any information regarding the case, you can contact the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Service at 1-800-346-3543.